Hey guys, how's it going? Today we're going to be building the iOS 8 Spotlight Search. Spotlight Search is accessed through your phone's home screen. If you pull down on the apps on the home screen, you'll get the little search bar. And it's a neat interaction. When you pull down, the background and the apps blur out to make room for the feed, and the keyboard pops up. And so we're going to be building that. It's pretty fun. I'm doing this in two parts. The first part is going to just be pulling down and opening it, and the second part is going to be doing reverse animations to close it, just in the interest of time. So if you only want to know how to create a prototype that opens this, you're only going to care about the first tutorial. If you want to build a fully functioning prototype and recreation, then you'll want to watch both. So let's get started. I'm building this on an iPhone 6 canvas size, so that's the canvases you're going to want to select. And then if you haven't already done it, go ahead and place the assets from the asset pack into Pixate. If you haven't downloaded it, there's a link in the description. It'll take you to my website, and you can download it from there. So the first thing I'm going to do is create a layer that's going to take up the entire screen. Now the way we're going to do this, we're going to have a group with our various stages of blurred backgrounds, a group with our various stages of blurred apps, and then we're going to have a layer on top that's going to just be our dragger. That's what's going to be triggering all this. We're not actually going to be touching the app layers themselves. We're just going to have a layer that's going to control everything on top. So we'll make this transparent, rename this to BG for background, and we'll place all of our assets inside for the background. So we've got first stage, the second stage, and then the final stage. We'll put those inside. We'll do first stage on bottom, third on top, and then we'll just lower the opacity, turn these off for 2 and 3, so just our clear background shows. Then we're going to make another layer. We'll make this transparent, and we'll rename this to Top Apps. Come back into our layers, and we'll grab all 3 of the top app versions. Now let's place those in so that the first one's on top, then we have 2 and 3. And so for the first one, we want this placed at 21 and 25. Now the second one, since it's blurry, the asset is larger in width. We'll just kind of move it so it's centered, but it comes over. I've got it placed at -10. And then for the third, make sure that's also centered, should be at -9 and -10. And then we'll go ahead and lower the opacity for these as well. Now let's make a reorder. We'll put the blurred ones on top, just like our backgrounds. Then we're going to come into our assets, and we're going to grab the 3 bottom app. This is for the tray. So we'll grab 1, 2, and 3, and just drop these in. We're going to make a new layer that's the size of this bottom apps container. So I'm just going to make a new one, and resize it to the height, and then full width. We'll make it transparent, and then we'll call this layer bottom apps, and we can place these inside. So bottom apps 2, let's place this at, we want this down here. It's right in the center of all this, so it's at -31 and -31. And then for the second one, same thing. It's right in the center, -31, -31. And then we'll lower the opacity on these 2. And we can minimize this. So now we've got our home screen set up. Now what we're going to do is we're going to make our layer that we're going to be interacting with, and drag this. So just make a new layer, make it transparent, but leave it at 100%. That way we can still interact with it. And we're going to name this Dragger1. Now it's Dragger1 because we're going to have two. The second one only comes into play when we make the for the reverse animations. So it we're not going to do anything with it, but we're going to make both so that we're ready for it next time. So we'll just duplicate that. Let's call this Dragger2. I'm going to make this one black. So just type 3 zeros into the RGB value. That's for its hex code. And then we'll turn the opacity off. So we can't interact with that. Even though it's on top, we're going to be interacting with Dragger1. And then for the final asset placements, we're going to bring in the keyboard. We'll just place this on bottom. It's nice, you can see it's transparent, so it's actually going to be functioning the way the actual iOS keyboard works. When it pops up, it's going to show the actual background instead of just a fake solid blur. And then we'll bring the search bar in, and then cursor. We're going to make the cursor blank. So we'll just kind of place this over. We'll put the cursor inside of the search bar asset, and we'll place it at 35 and 30. Actually, let's do 35 and 31. I think that looks good. Okay, and then we need to just put the last thing in, which is the status bar. The status bar remains on top at all times, so it's a separate asset for that. We replace this at 7 and 4. And we make sure the status bar is always on top, but we can bring Dragger 2 and 1, so they're on top, and then everything else is below them. Now we're all set up, so let's start to make our animations. First thing we want to do is add a drag animation to Dragger1. We want this to be vertical, and since we're only pulling down the height of the search bar, for when we do this, the entire animation occurs over the duration of the height of the search bar, which is 64 pixels tall. We're going to say that the minimum position for this is 0, so we can't push it up, and the max is 64. We're not going to add a stretch. We'll just leave it just like that. And then while we're in here, since we want this to move back into its position when we're done, and we're going to have this Dragger2 layer appear after, so we just want this to bounce back and reset. We're going to add a remove animation. We'll call this move back. And this is just based off Dragger1's drag release. So let's go back to 0, and it'll be instant. So now if I were to add, let's make this orange just to show. I add this, I can drag it down this far, and then as soon as I'm done, it automatically goes back. Okay, so let's start from the bottom. Let's do the backgrounds first. So what we do is we have 3 stages of blur, and that's what to me appeared to be the most correct and best looking. Like if you actually look on the iPhone, when you drag it, it seems to be doing a couple different types of blurs. It's not just going from solid to blur. There's kind of like a box blur that makes the apps sort of blur a little bit, and then everything merges into this one giant group of blurriness. So for this, what we're going to do, we're going to not do anything to background 1, but for background 2, we're going to want this to fade in. So we're going to call this fade in drag. This is going to be based off of Dragger1's drag position, continuously to final value. And since the duration of our drag is 64 pixels, I'm going to have this one come in over half of it. So it's going to be from 0 to 32. We'll have the drag reference edge to top, and we'll set that to 100. We're going to do the same thing for background 3. add a fade animation. Call this fade in drag. It's going to be based off dragger 1, the drag position, continuously to final value. And then we're going to have this come in when, after the second blur 2, background 2 is in. So it's going to be from 32 to 64. And that's going to fade into 100. So now if I drag, you see that background blur in. It's slow, and then it blurs in. So now we can minimize this. We're done with that for now. And then we'll come into top apps. So we do want the top apps to fade out when we do this. We don't want these to stay solid because they'll show through the blurred. So we're going to add a fade animation to all of these. And we'll start with 1. We'll call this fade in, or out, drag 1. Since we have 2 draggers, we're just going to call this fade out drag 1. It'll be easier to keep track of. It's going to be based off drag 1, drag position, continuously to final value. And just like with the backgrounds, we're going to be doing this thing the whole time. We've got this one going out from 0 to 32. And then the others will go from 32 to 64. But since this is fading out, we're going to have this set to 0. We can minimize that. For 2, we'll call this fade in drag 1, based off the dragger's drag position, continuously to final value. This is also based off 30 to 32, but it's going to fade into 100. So now you see we've got this. Looks good. So as I was saying, we've got this kind of box blurriness, and then we're going to do this third version, which is just the big cluster of blurry dots. So we'll call this one fade in drag 1, based off dragger's drag position, continuously to final value. This is from 32 to 64, and this will go up to 100. So that's that. Now let's do our bottom apps. We're going to do the exact same thing. So we'll add a fade animation to all 3 of these. Start with 1. This is going to fade out, so we'll call this fade out drag 1. Based off dragger's drag position, continuously to final value. Start at 0, end at 32. Go to 0% opacity. For 2, fade in, drag 1. Continuously to final value. From 0 to 32, it's going into 100%. We'll call this fade in drag 1. From 32 to 64, 100. Let's check to make sure this looks good. Yes, it does. Okay, so now we're going to come up to dragger 2. Now we have this, and we made this black for a reason. When you pull down on the search, a scrim appears. So we're going to make this dragger interactable and work as a scrim for us. So first what we need to do is replicate that drag animation, just like our first one. We want this to be able to move from 0 to 64. And then we want to have this fade in and work as a scrim. So we'll come to our animations, add a fade. We'll call this fade in drag 1. It's important to keep these things in order. So now we have 2, so we're going to base this off dragger 1's drag position. Continuously to final value, and we're going to have this animate over the entire duration, so from 0 to 64. We're going to have this fade into 25%. So now when I pull, it gets a little bit darker. Now we also want this to move with the dragger 1 because we don't want it to be sitting underneath the spotlight search, and what we're going to do is have you push dragger 2 up in order to reverse animate, so it needs to go down with dragger 1. So let's add a move animation. We'll call this move with 1. It's based off dragger 1's drag position, continuously with rate. We're going to limit the drag range just to be safe. Probably don't have to do this, but it's better to be safe than sorry. We'll have this set 0 to 64 the entire duration of the drag. We'll leave it at a rate of 1. So now this dark scrim is moving with our 1. We don't want it to be sitting beneath the spotlight search, which is going to be right up here. So this is perfect for us. So we'll close this. Now what we need to do is make the actual search bar and keyboard work. So if you're getting the search bar to come down, it's really easy. The search bar actually just moves with the same rate as you're dragging. It doesn't pop, it doesn't spring, it just slides along. So we'll call this move down with 1. Based off dragger 1's drag position. Continuously with rate, we'll just leave it at 1. So we got that. And then we need to do the keyboard. So we're going to have this pop up with our drag. It doesn't move up with rate, it just kind of pops up. So we're going to call this move up, drag 1. This is based off dragger 1's drag position. With duration to final value because we're going to use a condition, and that's going to make it appear once we reach almost the end of our drag, because that's the way that it works on iOS. So what we'll do, we're going to come and take the layer ID for dragger 1, that's going to be what this is based on. Just paste that in, do .y so it's at the top. And we're going to say if it's greater or equal to 62, so right near the end, we're going to give us a couple pixels of room. We're going to have its bottom pop up to the bottom of the screen, which is 667. Now, the easing curve we're going to be using is an ease out exponential. It's going to be a duration of 0.6 seconds. That should be good for us. So now once I pull, that pops up, just like that. Now in the iOS Spotlight search, the top apps move down, the bottom apps don't. So what we need to do is come back into this top apps. We're just going to add move animation. Now we're just refining our details. We do the same thing that we did with that other dragger, where you have this move with rate, because it just slides down with us. So it's going to be based off dragger's drag position, continuously with rate. Again, we don't need to limit the scroll range, but we can. So now this slides and pops up. And the final detail for this, just because it's fun, we're going to make this cursor blink. So we'll come into cursor, add a fade animation. Let's lower the opacity of cursor. Just name this blink. And this is going to be based off of dragger 1's drag position. With duration to final value, we're going to use that same condition that we just did. It's based off dragger 1's top. If it's greater or equal to 62, that's when it's going to start. Fade to 100. And here's a little trick. Use a spring easing curve. If you turn the friction down all the way, it will go forever. We use the tension as 50. I think it's pretty close. So now you don't see it until we finish, and now it just blinks. So that's it for part 1 of building the iOS Spotlight search. Look for part 2 and I will show you how to make this all go away. Thanks for watching.